how to make homemade candy corn.
Let's see what's cooking, let's get the facts. Let's see what's cooking, it's time for Yo-Yo Makes 12.
Hello everyone, first thing you're going to do is take 2.5 cups of powdered sugar, and you're going to add 1/3 of a cup of powdered milk, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and just whisk those things together. And then you're going to set this aside. In a medium-sized saucepan, place a cup of sugar, 2/3 of a cup of light corn syrup, and 1/3 of a cup of butter. Now you're going to bring this to a boil over medium heat. Once it's all melted, you can turn the heat up a little bit to medium-high. Bring it to a nice boil, and then you're going to continue to cook it until it reaches 230 degrees Fahrenheit. That's using a candy thermometer, or an instant read thermometer works as well. Now, most websites say 230 degrees Fahrenheit. I cook mine actually a little bit more, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Once you reach the right temperature, take it off the heat, and you're going to stir in that powdered sugar, powdered milk mixture, and just keep stirring it in a little bit at a time. It'll get super thick, and it'll actually be quite a challenge to stir it, but use some of those muscles and give it a good stir until it's nice and smooth, and it'll actually kind of get nice and white, and it'll kind of have a nice gloss to it. Then turn it out onto a countertop covered with waxed paper. I'm just using a silicone mat on my cookie sheet, and this is very hot, so I'm using a spatula to divide it into 3 equal pieces. Now we want to have our candy corn colors. I'm using gel paste food color. I'm tinting one of them orange, and to do this I'm using a spatula because it's very hot, and it'll be really hard on the fingers to touch it. But the spatula worked quite well. I just kept folding and turning it until I had a nice uniform color orange. And then I did the same thing with the yellow piece. Now you can see that it ends up getting quite thick, and it actually has almost a texture of Play-Doh. This is my very first attempt. This is the one I end up in the garbage. You can see even after it cooled, it stayed super sticky and would not come together. That was cooked to 230 degrees Fahrenheit using the same candy thermometer. So I'm going to recommend that you do yours until at least 245 to 255, in between there somewhere, before you take it off the heat. So once it's cool enough to handle with your hands, you're going to just take some small pieces from those bigger pieces. It's just easier to handle. And then you're going to roll them out so that they're like little log shapes. And once it's cool enough to handle, then the kids can help you make this at this point. Roll it out, and then you're going to stack them into the candy corn color sequence, the yellow, orange, and the white. And I just kind of press them together so that they're nicely stuck together. You don't want your pieces coming apart. Now there's a couple of ways that you can make your candy corn at this point. I'm going to show you 2 ways. This is the first way. So what you're going to do is just press the pieces together, and you might want to cut it in half just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And what you're going to do is you're going to shape this kind of a rectangular log into a wedge shape. So what you're going to do is press down on the white end to make it thin, and then you want to press up on the yellow end so that it's thicker. So it looks like a wedge that if you could actually stick this under a door to keep the door from closing. Do you know what I mean? So if you can see, the white is thin and then the yellow is thicker. If you look at it from the side, it's actually a little triangle. So all you have to do is take a knife and just cut the individual little candy corns, and they're in the wedge shape, so you get the classic candy corn triangle, and you can just reform it a little bit in your fingers to make it perfect. Also, I suggest you grease your knife with a little bit of cooking spray. It'll just be easier. Now, the second method is to leave that 3-color piece in that little rectangle shape. Don't bother with the wedge. You can see it's a little rectangle. And then take your knife and cut the pieces into little triangles. And you're going to alternate directions with your knife until you get a whole bunch of little triangles. Now, the advantage of this is that it's a lot faster. The disadvantage is that the pieces, some of them will have the traditional correct, in quotation marks, white at the tip, and some of them will have the yellow at the tip. But really, it doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot. That actually is probably my preferred method because it's a lot easier. And here's some completed candy corn. Once you're done cutting them, just let them sit for a couple of hours at room temperature and they'll harden up and dry up a bit. This makes a whole pile of candy corn. As you can see, it makes quite a bit. Now, how does it taste? Well, it doesn't taste exactly like the candy corn that you buy at the store, but I can tell you it certainly tastes a lot better than the stuff you buy at the store. It has a kind of a creamy kind of a flavor to it because of the butter that's in there and the milk ingredient. Now, these are time consuming to make, but they certainly are impressive when you tell that person that tries them that you actually made this candy corn. I have all of my Halloween recipes on a playlist. Click here to check them out. Thanks for watching.